Alright, in this video tutorial we're going to work on the background. So we're going to work on this little kind of effect we have over here in this gray area, and then we'll get rid of all those solid blocks of color we have right now in our current wireframe. Now to do our background, there's a slight problem with the way we designed this earlier. Now if I just if I hold down Option and click on this layer, it'll hide all layers but my background layer. And I'm going to turn back on my background so I can just see this. Now the problem is that first, this image is really large. If I was to just copy this entire area right here, you can see that from that marquee it's 1400 by 700, almost 800 pixels, which is a really large image just to save to get a little teeny bit of this fading effect on the corners and top left corner. But because this is a gradient, we can actually save this and scale it way down to save on file size when it downloads. So we'll look at that effect in a minute. The other problem here is that this image is a gradient and it goes right to the edge of the screen. And that's okay for the top because the top is going to be at the top edge no matter what. But if we jump back here to our browser and look, the edge of my site is not always going to be the edge of the browser because it centers in the middle of the screen. So the way our design currently is it will have a hard line. I'm just going to resize this to illustrate this. So I'm going to take this layer and resize it and scale it down a little bit. And you can see the problem right away. This left side has this big hard edge which would show up, and we don't want that. It needs to be perfectly smooth. So the only way to fix that at this point is to actually redo this element. So I'm going to turn back on, I'm just going to turn back on these layers so I can kind of see that. And I need to redo that shade. So I'm going to create a new layer right above it, and we'll just kind of follow the same method we did before really quick. We'll just get the lasso tool here. And I'll just pull out a lasso, except I'm not going to go quite as much over to the edge like I did before. And we'll kind of cruise down in here. And we'll kind of peek out down here a little bit. And then back over. Okay, so we've got that marquee. And we want to feather this. So we're going to go to the select menu down to modify over to feather. And we'll leave this maybe on 40 pixels and hit OK. And let's fill this with white. So I'm going to make sure my colors over here are black and white. D does that. And whoops, command or control backspace will fill that color with white. I'm going to hide this one here. So you can see this new one is quite a bit better. So it doesn't bleed all the way over into the edge. At least I don't believe so. We might have to fix that just a hair. But that's a lot closer for this. And if that's a little too intense, which it is, of course, we just get the opacity. And we back the opacity way off on that layer to get that same effect we had before. So I've backed that off to 21, and now I'm going to zoom back in, and that's looking a little bit better. So it doesn't quite bleed out as much as that first one did. This second one I'm going to end up using as it's a little bit tighter. Okay, so now we've done that. Let's go ahead and save this image out. So I'm just going to delete this old layer so I don't get confused and just leave the new one there. And what I need to do is Option click that to hide them all and turn back on my background. And I need to save a big giant image of this. So we'll get our marquee tool and we'll just come over here and select all those pixels. Whoops. Let's try that again. So select all those pixels for that background area. And we're just going to copy this for now. So I'm going to do Command Shift C. Instead of creating a slice, we'll just copy this. Say File New. Photoshop automatically pastes in the dimensions of the copied file and paste it into this one. And because we may need to do a little bit of work here, but we'll see. So let's save this out as a JPEG. So we're going to say File, Save for Web. And you can see right now at 100%, I mean, this is just really, really big. So we don't need all of this data. Right now it's 23K, but we can just take this percentage-wise and let's bump it down to 33.33%. So this is a lot smaller, and we could probably even go smaller than that. Maybe I'll just go to 25 and let's test that out. So at 25%, it's only 350 by 212, and it's only 2 kilobytes. So that's a really small, almost 3K there. So let's go ahead and save this. So I'll save this image. I'm going to save this one inside of my images folder because I'm not using slices this time. So I do need to make sure I go into the images folder. And I'll just name this guy the wrap or the background. So this is going to be the we'll call it Wisp wisp-bg for background, and just hit save there. So let's minimize Photoshop here and let's jump back to our code. And we're going to add that background way up on our body tag. So let's come up to the very top here, and we're going to need to create a tag for our body. So let's create that, and we're going to say background-image, and we'll set this to the URL. And this is going to be images/wisp.bg.jpg, I believe is what I called that. And let's go ahead and save that. Jump back to our Safari and refresh. Okay, you can see that background definitely is appearing back there, and it's repeating every which way. So that's good. Now what we need to do is we need to center this background and stretch it and turn off the repeating nature. So we'll come back up in here to this rule, and we're going to set background-repeat to none. Let's save and refresh. We'll just do one of these at a time. Whoops, I always do this one wrong. It's no-repeat. I always forget that one. And refresh. Okay, so now it's not repeating, and that's perfectly good. And now let's change the size of the background. So we can say background-size. And let's set this equal to 1400 pixels. If we jump back to our Photoshop document, we measure the entire width here. It should be 1400 pixels. You can see that marquee, it's 1400. So now we're essentially stretching that little teeny tiny image really back out to its full width, which is what we wanted. So let's save this, come back here and refresh. And now you can see it stretched that entire image all the way out. And now we can start to see this effect. So I'm going to turn off, and you can see it still has this nice smooth gradient even though the image is really small. Let's turn off these colors that we've set up. So let's turn off this red and turn off this green. So we'll jump back to our CSS. And let's just delete the background color on the header and the background color on the logo, and save and come back here and refresh. And you can see now that little smooth gradient peeks around just like it's supposed to. It's going to peek over this side, and it's nice and centered, and everything's looking really well there. So that's a quick trick on how we can use a gradient to set as the background. Now the one issue with this particular site, I'm just going to zoom out so you can see it, is that and this the zoom doesn't quite work as well here, but the background image is only going to go as far as the height of this image. So we need to set the rest of this white color to just be this color of brown. So back to our Photoshop mockup, we're going to jump back to this one. We can actually close this one, and we don't need to save there. So we'll just say don't save. And we need to sample whatever color this is. So let's get our eyedropper and sample this color and come in here and copy that hex code. That's the hex code for that brown. And we'll jump back in here to our body tag, and we're going to set a background color. Background-color, we'll set equal to that. Don't forget the pound sign. And now we'll save. We can come back here and refresh. And now we have, you can see that brown everywhere. So if I go back up to 100%, no matter what the height of this page is or the width of the browser window, we'll always have that brown. And then this little effect will just kind of be tucked away inside of there. So that's the background image. The next section, we're going to start to tackle this featured slider.